Good afternoon, everybody. My name is miahtheking, and today we're looking at a game just released on Steam called Tyrant's Blessing, developed by Mercury Game Studio and published by Freedom Games. Now, you might recognize Freedom Games because of another game that they published that I recently did on my channel called Symphony of War: The Nephilim Saga. So this should be fun. It's labeled as a tactical RPG roguelike strategy simulation centered in a world called Tiberia, or maybe it's a kingdom called Tiberia. Anyway, the game has a pretty interesting idea. Nearly everyone has been turned into undead, and you take control of the last living warriors. So, at first it kind of sounds like a unique idea, and it's published by people who, put out a pretty good game recently, so, let's dive in together and see if this game is worth our time and money, shall we? Oh, and by the way, this game is not in early access, and it's costing me $20 US. So, basically, the gist of the game is this. You play as a princess, Princess Lindell. Apparently, it's her kingdom that was attacked by this tyrant. I can't remember his name. But he wanted to bring everlasting life and prosperity to her kingdom, the bastard. But in his mind, the way to do that is by making everybody undead, because then they could live forever. Well, obviously, the normal humans didn't like this very much, but he was so powerful and so quick that they just couldn't keep up, and he basically took over. The game gives you very little detail on the specifics of any of that. I'm kind of just adding 1 and 2 together to equal 3 so I can try to figure out what's going on here. So now, as the princess, you are leading a ragtag group of heroes and adventurers to try and stop him while righting wrongs across the nation. That's pretty much all there is to this. Other than the whole he wants to make everyone undead for happiness thing, other than that, it's not a very original or unique story. It's, evil overlord takes over, uses undead to conquer everything, and horrors await. I mean, I've seen that a million times, as I'm sure some of you guys are. But, whatever. Now, I want to go over the things that are good about this game first. As a commenter said, maybe that's a good idea, so that's what I'm going to do. Plus, I wanted to. First, it's the graphics. Now, the whole thing is pixelated, and no change in the art style, as some of you complained about with the last game. And so, because of that, I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate the fact that it's all pixel. But despite being pixelated, it still looks rather pleasant. The coloring isn't too bright, it has nice contrast, and for a pixelated game it has a surprising amount of attention to detail. Plus, the effects that you see during battle work really well as well. Overall, the game was pretty smooth. It never broke on me, it never froze or stuttered or crashed or have any problems loading up, so its stability was pretty good as well. The sound effects and the music are also nice. The music fits the theme perfectly and each scenario perfectly. The sound effects sound exactly as you want them to, no complaints there. There's no voice acting, however. The gameplay loop itself is next, and overall the gameplay look was alright, I guess. I mean, it's basically click on a map, find a mission, read the very brief mission text, complete the mission, rinse and repeat without any change or variance ever. At least for my first hour of playthrough. And even though the terrain changes with each level and it gets progressively harder, it's still pretty mundane overall. But the gameplay mechanic worked in a sense. It wasn't hard to understand, and overall each mission is pretty engaging. This is due in part to two things. The first is the AI. They're smart, and they're trying really hard to kill just any one of your units. And the second is the design of combat. So this might get a bit confusing, so hold on tight. Basically, it's turn-based. You move a unit, but there's a shadow of that unit that remains on his previous spot, meaning that if the enemy is aiming for you, they could still hit you. See, they have to line up their shots on one turn, and then they take their shot on their next turn. And if you don't move, the enemy, they can still hit you after you move. So what I mean is you have to move the enemy. You have to push the enemy. Following along so far? Here, watch the gameplay, and it'll help you kind of understand. Each unit you have gets 2 moves that do different things, with the sole goal being of misplacing the enemy on the board. And when I say moves, I mean like skills. So the game becomes a strategy on countering the enemy movements, not attacking them or even trying to survive. The only way to win is to force the enemy to move with your skills, and it changes what spot they're standing in, so their attack on their next turn doesn't hit your units. Oh, and because they're undead, they come back every time they die, up to a certain amount, which is shown as skulls at the top of the screen. Following along with me so far? Okay, if not, just watch. You'll see in the video, you'll see what I mean. So, do I think this game is worth your time and money? Well, as of writing, no, I do not. I think the game is worth maybe $10 and doesn't really deserve our time. I know it doesn't deserve my time. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this because there are probably a lot of people out there who are into this sort of thing and are going to love it, but it's not for me. It's not. I'm not one of them, okay? But just hear me out. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I think that it's just a really small game. A small game that you used to find on Newgrounds back in the day for free. or on the original Game Boy for, like 20 bucks, but back in the day when Game Boy was brand new and every game was expensive. Look, here's why I think this. First of all, on the Steam store page, it shows you a clip of a cutscene, and I have yet to encounter any cutscenes in the game, so where is that one located exactly? What do I gotta do to get that cutscene? Because it ain't there. I didn't see it. But that's not all. It's loaded with problems, a lot of problems, at least in my point of view. While the game technically functions and sets out to do what it's meant to do, I think, I also think it's only marketing to a specific audience. I am not part of that audience. It's the same thing over and over and over again. The missions only vary slightly, but they are mostly the same thing over and over. The tutorial barely taught me squat. If a single unit of yours dies in battle, the game decides to revive that person, and you need to restart all your progress. All of it. I lost my dog in my 4th or 5th mission in, and the game forced me to revive him, and then forced me to start all the way back at mission 1. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen a video game do. I lost my dog, so I have to restart my whole campaign? How does that make any sense? How does it make any sense that if you're in an army and you're going through the war for years and one soldier dies and you're like, oh, soldier died, we all gotta go back to the beginning and start all over again? How does that make any sense? I have no idea how to switch party members unless the game forces me to do so I can't pick and choose my team per mission. Your units cannot hit through your own units. So, like in a lot of other games similar to this, if you want to hit that enemy in front of your squad mate, well, in this one first, you gotta stab through him to hit the enemy, thus dealing damage to both ally and foe. Now, how does that make any sense? You telling me he couldn't just poke his spear over the guy's shoulder to hit the enemy? Or maybe that's not how it happens. Sometimes when you go to do that, they don't hit your ally, and they hit the enemy instead. But sometimes they hit your ally and the enemy, even though there's no description in the text at all saying as to why they did or didn't do this. And not only that, if you bounce an enemy off of one of your allies, your ally gets hurt. Why? Why not have both your allies do damage, like a teamwork killing it kind of thing? That would make sense. I've seen that done before in games, so why not here? Why is it that when you smack an enemy and they bounce off somebody and they bounce off one of your teammates, they both get hurt? That doesn't make any sense. There are moments where an enemy mage will create fire on your units, and even if you move them, they still get hurt because their shadow is still there and hasn't had a chance to move yet. So it starts you off with a major disadvantage, but it's not necessary because him randomly creating fire every round is already a disadvantage. The dialogue in between missions is mostly personal, boring stuff that has nothing to do with the rest of the story. The story hasn't progressed at all in over an hour of gameplay. It's just been mission after mission. So even after doing, I don't know, maybe a dozen missions or so, I barely made any progress or learned anything about the world, the tyrant, the princess, our plan, or pretty much anything other than she misses her parents, or he wants to have a spear throwing competition. Whoop-de-doo, good for you. There's a little bit more pressing issues right now than a throwing spear competition like the undead that are eating people over there. I've rescued people in missions thinking they might join me or reward me or something, but no. They just give a little dialogue and poof, disappear. Oh, and did I mention that you can only take 4 people with you on a mission? Scratch that. Only 3? Because every single time I want to go on a mission and take 4 people, after choosing the 3rd, it automatically forces you to choose an animal companion. And I know what you're thinking. I thought you said you couldn't choose your units for every mission. And what I mean is, at the beginning of the game, it asks you which people you want to take. And then you take them. And then after a certain amount of time, one of your companions who hasn't been able to go on a mission will pout and cry and say, I want to fight too. And they're like, oh, well, you gotta rearrange him with someone. You don't get to rearrange your whole team. You just get to pick out who he substitutes for. But your dog still has to show up and follow along. Can't replace the dog. So why? What's the deal with that? So you always have to take the dog or the panda no matter what, even though they do very little in battle? So it's only really 3 people and 1 animal every mission. You can upgrade your units a little bit after spending money in mana stones, but it's not exactly easy since you make barely any gold and you gain barely any mana stones per mission. In fact, if I remember correctly, you don't gain hardly any mana stones per mission, depending on the mission. After completing almost a dozen missions, I think I was able to upgrade my team 3 times, once per person, and all I did was increase their life by 1. You can eventually use the achievements of doing certain things in the game to randomly recruit new units, but none of the units that you randomly recruited were the ones that you saved. They don't pop up, it's just some random person. So why bother saving that person? Shouldn't they join you or reward you or just something? Anything? I've got no idea or no way of customizing gear of my units, so there's no loot to speak of, and as far as I know, you have a limited stock of things that you can buy from the trader once he arrives at your camp. Your camp, by the way, has nothing you can do in it, at least in the first hour to 2 hours that I was playing. Now, maybe you need to play the game for several hours and get super deep into it to unlock all the cool stuff. I don't know. I didn't play that long. I don't trust video games anymore, so I refuse to give any of them the benefit of the doubt. You either show me all you got in the first 2 hours, or at least show me some cool stuff in the first 2 hours, or you just lost out on a sale, and there are a lot of other people out there who agree with me. The bottom line is this. The game had great potential, and if it opens up giving you a lot more stuff to do, then maybe it'll be worth it. But within my first 2 hours of gameplay, I was getting more and more bored the more I played, with the biggest problem being the missions, which is the main gameplay. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. How long do I need to go before I unlock something cool, or is this just it? I mean, how is this worth $20? Watch the gameplay and tell me if doing this over and over again for the next 10 hours is worth your $20. This Steam store page says, pick your heroic roster carefully, which I was unable to do at all. It says, make choices, choose to fight, or rescue, or gather your strength. Well, I couldn't do any of those either. The only choice I had was which mission I was going to partake in. I didn't have an option to rest, and doing one mission means now you can just go and do the other mission. So what was the choice there? The fact that you could choose which one to go first? Look, I think this game is advertising a lot of things that it either doesn't have, or doesn't explain very well, or doesn't show until you're super deep into it. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm missing something, but within my first 2 hours I was not having the experience I was led to believe via the Steam store page. The missions are interesting in how difficult and strategic they are, but otherwise the game is just a bit bland and lacking in a lot of things. So do I think the game is bad? No, not really. My main concern here is twofold. The pricing is $10 too expensive, and the game advertises far more than what is really there. I don't know how long the game is. I don't know if it does have all those things that I'm complaining about missing. But all I know is that even with those things, I'm not sure if this game is worth $20. And if none of those things are within the first 2 hours, how do I know they're there at all? And for $20, I don't want to waste it on a game that doesn't give me what I was expecting. Does this game look and sound interesting to you? Then feel free to play it, and I hope you enjoy it. But if you were looking for branching story, interesting or unique story or characters, in-depth lore, dialogue, meaningful choices, this game is not for you. It's basically just a strategy simulator doing it in a different kind of way. It has super difficult levels, so if you were looking for a tactical strategy game of super hard difficulty that you could like practice on or something, then I suppose this would work for that. If that sounds like something you'd like to try, then go ahead. I hope you enjoy it. But otherwise, if you were looking for some serious role-playing, story-based strategy kind of game, look elsewhere, people. I wish I could tell you more, but honestly, there's nothing else to talk about. This is just it. There's not much more to say. So I just hope that this video was able to at least give you more of an idea as to what to expect. So that's all the time I got for this video, everyone. I hope you found the video entertaining or at least informative. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.